I'm gonna do something a bit different today, and that's because today's video is gonna be filled with nothing but stock images. And that's because I want to talk to you about some watches I don't actually have. These are 10 watches that I've been looking at, maybe slightly obsessing over. Ones I'd love to see in person, even if just for a short time for review. But since a lot of these are pretty expensive watches, I probably won't see most of them. And since a lot of these are lesser known watches, I thought I might as well share what I'm looking at with all of you. Now, these aren't in any particular order, but I thought it'd be fun to start off with one of the most impressive Orient stars I've seen, which also translates into being one of the most expensive Orient stars, and that's the new M34 F8. And I believe the retail for these is about $3,000 US. But that's because it has a newer movement as well as a Grand Seiko worthy dial. In fact, I was reading that the manufacturer they're using for these is one that makes dials for Grand Seiko. So this is a big step up for Orient, or maybe a step back, as they're going up in quality kind of to the level they used to have with the Royal Orients. And I just love to see one in person, but at the price, I probably won't. The last time I bought an expensive Orient was in 1964. I bought it mostly to review it, and it didn't really vibe with me in the end. So when I resold it, I took a bit of a hit. And with these being even more expensive, I don't really want to do that again. But it's not going to stop me from looking at them. Next, let's talk about something that's a bit more affordable, and that's the Casio A1100. And if you're a Casio fan, you probably already know all about it. But if not, here it is. It's a new, very retro, really retro issue, like 70s retro. So these predate even what I remember in the 80s. And to me, it's just really cool, and I'd love to see one in person. One quick interruption. Future Shane here. Now, I know at the beginning of this video, I said that this entire thing was going to be stock footage, but the thing is, I actually recorded that a couple of weeks ago, and since then, I got a few things. So, you might as well enjoy some real footage of this and one other watch that's going to come up shortly. Anyway, back to the video. Even though some of their reviews are a bit mixed on whether they're worth it, but at $135, it's not bad. And part of the whole reason for running this channel is to give me a budget to do the occasional foolish thing. And if I'm being honest, the main reason I want this is because I saw someone pair it with a Vario bun strap on Facebook. It's weird, completely unpractical, but totally awesome. And I just want to try it too. And as long as we're talking about Japanese quartz, this is another one I'd love to see. And that's the Citizen AQ4091, part of their The Citizen line, which I think is the new name for their Chronomasters. That's something I gotta look into. But whatever you want to call them, they are Citizen's top of the line watches. And these ones retail for about $2,500, which does seem crazy for Citizen. But it does come with a well-finished titanium case, a high accuracy solar movement with an accuracy around 5 seconds a year, and a beautiful washi paper dial. At least that's how I think they're pronounced. So I'm kind of looking at these as like a cheaper version of a Grand Seiko. And again, I know for a lot of people spending this much on a quartz watch is nuts, but I'd still love to see one. Although I think at this price, many of you would just recommend going with a used Omega, which we might as well talk about next. Now, one of my grails is an Aquaterra, and someday I'd love to get one. But while I was perusing eBay, I ran across this very unusual Seamaster. And if you watch the channel, you know I like red watches. And I never knew there was a red Seamaster. So I started looking into this one a little bit, and found out that it's a 90s era 36mm James Bond style Seamaster. One that was only sold in Japan at a particular department store. So odd, rare, and red. Something completely up my alley. Only thing that's stopping me is price. That, and I'm not sure I want a 36mm Speedmaster. Next up, let's talk about some more reasonably priced watches with Certina, which, if you're not familiar, is a Swatch brand, and it's one I've been curious about for a while. In fact, a lot of you have recommended I look into their DS Action divers. So this year I decided I wanted to check one out, and I'll probably wind up going with just a regular 38mm. But I'm also curious about their 38mm titanium version, and I've heard a lot of people refer to this one as a Pelogos Killer, so I'm really curious about it. Yet another interesting Certina that just came out is their DS Action GMT. And I'm seeing this as sort of Swatch's response to all the new, more affordable 9075 GMTs out there. as it's also a true or traveler's GMT, but it's one with an 80-hour power reserve. And all of that for about $1,000. So sounds like a watch that'll be pretty popular. And then there's the Glycine Combat Classic Moon Phase, a watch that's actually been out for quite a while. And I've actually been wanting to see it for years. You see, when most people get a Glycine, it's going to be their combat sub, or maybe an airman. But the Combat Classic is their lesser known field watch, and there's actually a moon phase variant of it out there. It's a little bit of an odd combo, but it's a really interesting watch, and I'm honestly kicking myself for not getting one sooner. Because a few years ago, you could find these things on Ashford or Joma Shop for like $300, $400 all day long. And now they're a lot harder to find, let alone finding a good deal on one. Next, Fair, which is another brand I've been really curious about. Love their vibrant use of colors, and there have been a few models I've been interested in buying. And right now, this is the one that I'm leaning most towards, which is their 36mm three-hander. Either the black velvet or the white resolute. Both classic, sharp-looking watches. And the black in particular, I saw it on a bracelet and thought it'd be a great explorer alternative. I also really love that Fair decided to use the LJP G100 movements. I think this is the only watch they're offering it in, and right now I think it's one of the best off-the-shelf movements out there, as it's sort of this super Swiss-made 9015 with a 68-hour power reserve. And at $1,000, it's not bad. I mean, when Zealous has had them and used them, it's a lot better deal, but still, here, not bad. And speaking of unusual movements, let's talk about the new Yema Superman Slim, which is using their new in-house 70-hour micro rotor movement, allowing this to be a killer 39mm watch with a thickness around 10mm. Although, honestly, I'm not sure if that's with or without the crystal, something I should look into. But as it is, it's an interesting killer looking watch. But at $2,500, I'm not sure it's that interesting. And especially with an all painted dial. Usually I prefer a little bit more depth. And with that new movement, honestly, I'd rather not be a paid beta tester. But if it does all pan out, looks like it could be a killer watch. Next is another brand I've heard a lot of good things about, and I'd love to check out one of their watches. And that's Maine. Or Maine, however it's pronounced. But the watch I really like is their Brooklyn 36. And honestly, I was actually talking to them a while ago about doing a review, but the timing didn't quite work. Now, what I really like about the Brooklyn is that it doesn't look like any other watch out there. I mean, it is a Panda, but it's not a chronograph. It's actually a multifunction. And I love here with this particular one that instead of white, it's using this off-white with little grainy specks. I'm not sure why I like it, but I just think it looks killer. And that's also what I've heard about the quality of their watches. Now, the last two watches here are ones I've actually seen in person, so they're sort of the exception, but it was just for a brief period of time. You see, last summer, Jack Mason and Notice put on a small watch fair here in Dallas called Intersect. And one of the other brands that came out was Sao of Baltimore. At least that's how I think it's pronounced. I'm horrible at that, but you guys know that. They're doing a lot of cool killer watches. And one of the things that really surprised me when I was talking to them is that they're now connected to a shop creating ETA clones out of Baltimore for some of their models. Now, out of all their watches, the one I liked the most was the Baltimore World Timer. It's an NH34 GMT in a titanium case. But instead of your typical dive style watch, this was more of a Flieger. Really cool watch, really interesting watch, and of course I like the red version too. And the last watch I want to talk about is the Formic 39mm Essence. Formix was also at that show, and I was really impressed with their watches. Both the Essence and the Reef Diver. They're both great, but if I were ever to get one, I think I'd probably go with the White Essence. Killer looking sports watch with a crispy white dial. And some unique engineering to it as well. Plus, just an amazing build quality. Something that's coming close to lower end luxury. And I think the only thing that's really holding this brand back is that they're using standard movements rather than something in-house. But then again, that also makes them more reasonable and obtainable. So, not necessarily a bad thing. And I really like that the Essence with its grooved dial gave off some serious Aquaterra vibes. Yet at the same time, it had a design that was distinctly its own. And one thing I've always said is that the best watches out there walk that fine line between originality and familiarity. Anyway, Really cool watches, really well made watches, and some high priced watches here as well. I think the Essence is about 1600. So that's what I've been obsessing about lately. Now, as usual, let me know what you think about all of this, as well as what watches are living in your head rent-free these days. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, watch it from the beginning, do something down below. Helps the channel. I'm Shane, this is Relative Time, and I'll see you next time.